Hello everyone and welcome back to the semifinals of the 2020 Chessable Masters, featuring a game that features more than 3 moves. It's Ding Liren versus Magnus Carlsen, and this is game 6 of their match. So the first 4 games ended in a draw. Well, not really in a draw. Ding disconnected in the first game, then Magnus sacrificed his queen on move 3, and then the game 3 and 4 were drawn. And now game 5 was drawn. Game 5 was a blitz game. No longer are they playing rapid, and this is now game 6 of blitz. So if this game also ends in a draw, we go to Armageddon game 7, and if not, we have the winner of the first match. So without further ado, let's check it out. Ding with the white pieces opens with c4, as he did in the previous game. That was well, so shortly abrupted, and now Magnus goes for e5, not e6 and queen g5 like he did in the previous game. We have g3, knight to f6, and bishop to g2. Ding's moves, however, are exactly the same as in the previous game. We have bishop to c5, and now d3. We have castles by Magnus and the knight to c3. We have h6, taking away the g5 square from the dark square bishop, and knight to f3. Now just preparing to castle. Magnus goes rook e8 to defend his pawn, and castles now. And here there is one game in the database where c6 was played, but here Magnus goes for d6, and it is as of move 7 that we have a completely new game. And now Ding strikes in the center. He goes d4. We have e captures and knight captures, now opening up the light square bishop's diagonal. So black needs to play c6 before developing the light square bishop, as he does. We have c6 on the board. We have b3, and now a5. Further expanding on the queen side, maybe ideas like knight a6 to c7 will be possible in the future. So here bishop to b2, and here knight to a6 by Magnus. We have queen to d2, developing the queen, connecting rooks, and queen to e7. Magnus does the same. We have rook 8 to d1, and now bishop to d7. We have h3, making room for king to come to h2, and in the future you want to play e4, f4, and so on. So bishop back to b6 by Magnus, and now e4. And now if you look at the position, white is definitely controlling more space. He has a very nice bind here on the central d5 square. His bishops are very powerful. The dark square bishop is very strong here. Also the light square bishop very nicely placed. And all in all, white definitely is better here. So knight to c5 by Magnus, and now rook f to e1. We have rook 8 to d8, and now king to h2. Ding just slowly keeps improving his position, and bishop to c8 by Magnus, now opening up the d file for the rook. And here the question is whether you want to start further expanding with f4 and so on, or do you want to try something else. And Ding doesn't want to go for f4. He goes for knight to f5 instead, which forces Magnus to give up the bishop pair. And this is one of those positions that you are better as a white, but you are better if nothing is happening. For example, if you try something active, things can very easily go wrong. So here, Ding goes knight to f5. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen here, so you don't get the wrong idea. And now it's a really strong knight. It's a beautiful outpost for the knight, attacks the queen, and Magnus decides to eliminate it by giving up the bishop pair. So bishop captures, e captures, and now Ding has a doubled f pawn. A doubled f pawn. So queen back to c7. And here we have rook captures on e8, just trading rooks. We have knight captures. The rook needs to keep an eye on the d6 pawn, as does the queen. So knight captures on e8, and now knight back to e2, opening up the dark square bishop's diagonal, and now the knight is being remaneuvered to f4. So knight to d7. Magnus also wants to remaneuver the knight to f6. We have knight to f4, and now knight d to f6 by Magnus. And now queen to c2. You could try something like bishop to f3 to just keep an eye on everything and give a move to black, but Ding goes queen to c2. And queen 2 is a move that is hard to explain. I think Giri mentioned it during the live stream, as his match with Nepo was over a bit sooner, that he had no idea what queen to c2 was. And I also have no idea what queen to c2 does, other than it kind of guards the f5 pawn, but other than that, it is very strange. I have no idea. But okay, we have queen to e7, and now comes rook to d2, just adding more protection to the second rank. Now the f2 pawn is nicely guarded twice. We have rook to d7, preparing queen to d8. At some point, black would really be interested in pushing d5, so here bishop to f3. Just improving the position. We have queen to d8, now again with possibilities of maybe going d5, and queen to d1 now, just adding another defender to the d5 square. We have bishop back to c7, the bishop might be useful on this diagonal, and knight to d3 now, trying to trick black into going d5, because if you go d5 now, white can just trade once and go knight c5, and the rook has nowhere to go. I mean, you could go to e7, but then you lose the pawn, or if you go here, just knight captures on b7 wins. So Ding, Magnus of course doesn't go for that. We have rook to e7, and here Ding just goes back, king to g2. We have queen to c8 by Magnus, now attacking the f5 pawn, and the g4. Ding just nicely defends it. We have knight to h7, now Ding has weakened some dark squares here around his king, maybe knight to g5 will be an idea in the future. And now rook to e2, offering a trade of rooks. We have queen to d8, defending the rook, and now rook captures. We have queen captures and queen to e2. Ding is controlling more space here, and he would definitely enjoy trading here. Queens here, for example, if captures, white is still controlling much more space. He still has the better bishop, and he's still controlling d5. Even though it looks like you can push d5 here and free your dark square bishop, it's not the case, because after a trade here, captures, knight c5, wins the pawn, as after you defended with, let's say, b6, you get knight to a4, and now the bishop covers b5, you cannot push the pawn, and you're just going to play bishop d4 and win the b6 pawn. So it loses the pawn by force. So queen back to d8, Magnus avoids the queen trade, and here we have king to g1. We have knight e to f6, and now bishop back to g2. So a lot of maneuvering, as it is a blitz game, so you don't have a lot of time. You just want to make good moves without ruining your position, as it is a very complicated position. So knight back to f8 by by Magnus, and bishop to d4 now. We have knight 8 to d7, and queen to e3 now. And here bishop to b6. Here Magnus finds a way to trade some pieces. Ding says okay, we have bishop captures, queen captures, and here Ding does go for the queen trade. But here Magnus is more happy with his position than with the queen trade that we've shown. So captures, and now it's a bishop and knight against two knights. So let's see what happens here. We have f4. Just grabbing more space here on the king side, preparing ideas like g5. So here you can again consider d5, but again, if you go d5 right away, knight to c5 will be very annoying, going after that b7 pawn. And after a trade happens here, you will win this pawn, and now there is no way for you to defend the c6 pawn. So it is well, it's not something you want to do. So instead, knight f to d7 by Ding, and king to f2, by Magnus. And Ding now just brings the king into the game. King f2, Magnus does the same. We have king to f8, and now g5 finally starts pushing on the king side. We have f6 by Magnus, and h4 now. We have knight to c5. Magnus offers a trade of knights, and even though you can double Carlsen's pawns here, it shouldn't be a problem, because the two pawns really cover the light square bishop nicely. So here Ding just defends, king e3, and Magnus trades here. We have captures, and now king to e7. We have king to d4, that's a very active king by Ding, and now knight to a8. Magnus now plans to remaneuver the knight. So bishop to e4. And knight to c7 by Magnus. We have a3, preparing to further push with b4, and king to d7 now. And now we have b4. Captures, and now Magnus blocks the position with b5. So it seems like for the entire game, it's Ding who's pushing, and Magnus is just trying to defend a bit more passive position. And now here you have to be very careful what you play here. Best for white would be something like bishop to d3, or even to just capture on b5. The problem with capturing on b5 is that now the knight can capture, and now you have these two pawns which are very strong, and white has an isolated b pawn which could become a target later on, as it is on a dark square. So Ding said, okay, I'm not going to capture or bishop d3, I'm going to play something even better. I'm going to play c5. Now you either capture and allow me to recapture, or you can push just something like e5, but then it's not going to be a problem for me. I'm just going to move my bishop, and that's it. Your knight will not have any ways of entering the game. However, this move by Ding loses the game. So feel free to pause the video and solve this endgame for Magnus while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on being an excellent endgame player. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's knight to a6. And knight to a6 is a really strong move, as it, well, comes with the threat of winning a pawn. So Ding says, okay, I'm going to trade on d6 with captures, and king c3. So everything is defended. Now the knight cannot capture, but now comes c5. And again, there's the threat of just knight captures on b4, and then the two passed pawns will be, of course, completely winning. So Ding captures on c5, but now king captures, and Magnus got his king all the way from the 7th rank now to c5, and he's threatening b4 and so on. So here, bishop to c2, the bishop is ready to guard against any tricks here. However, this bishop to c2 move just makes it a whole lot easier for Magnus to end the game. He goes knight b4, and now the problem is, even though the material on the board is equal, you cannot allow this trade, because then the white king will need to tend to the pawn here, while the black king will just gobble up all of these pawns and win the game easily. So you cannot afford a queen trade. So here Ding goes queen to bishop to b3, but now Magnus just plays knight to d5 check, and it was in this position on move 55 that Ding resigned the game. So Magnus wins game 6 and also the first match. So yes, the good deed goes unpunished. And yeah, here he resigned because it's check and you're going to lose the pawn. So like we said, you cannot avoid a trade. If you capture, then you're just going to have to deal with the passed pawn while the black king gobbles up all of these pawns. Or even if white trades once, you're still going to gobble up these guys and just start pushing your passed pawns. Or if you go for something else, for example, after this knight d5 check, you could play king d3. Captures with check, king e3, you're gonna move the knight back, let's say with check, king e4, but now after the knight moves, it's still completely winning. Now you're even up a pawn, which is much better, and there's not much to look for here. You could trade, maybe captures, but still, with the black king being so active, it will be very easy to push the pawn and just win the game outright. And it does help black a lot that all of his pawns on the king side are in dark square, so the light square bishop is useless in this case. So yeah, after knight to d5 check, Ding resigns, and Magnus takes match 1. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Victor Gannon, Philip Eastlake, Peter Rasmussen, Kevin Johnson, and Stefan Lindpointer for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Chessable Masters, checking up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. And yes, we are going to have a Tal game tomorrow to celebrate the 700,000 subscribers milestone, but I didn't want to make this video about that. We're going to make the next video about that and celebrate it properly. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.